House Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte now threatening to subpoena Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. This as Republicans push for answers on whether Rosenstein was serious when he reportedly floated the idea of secretly recording President Trump. We have two members of the Judiciary Committee on the program this morning. Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe, a short time ago. He will be joining us momentarily. Right now, my first guest, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, is joining me. He also sits on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and he is a member of the House Freedom Caucus. Congressman, it's good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
You bet. Good to be with you this morning.
I know you have a big week ahead in terms of testimonies. You've got Glenn Simpson was expected on Tuesday. Then on Thursday, James Baker. Friday, Nellie Orr. Let's talk first about Rod Rosenstein. He was supposed to meet with Congress. What happened?
He didn't show up. Look, when you're the guy who in reality is running the Justice Department and the chairman of the committee that has jurisdiction over your agency asks you to come, you are obligated to come, and you are obligated to come and testify under oath. He didn't do that. So if it takes a subpoena, that's exactly what should happen. We need him to answer questions about all kinds of issues associated with the Trump-Russia investigation, but specifically the statement that's alleged that he said where he talked about actually recording the commander-in-chief of our great country, and he talked about the 25th Amendment. That's specifically what I want to ask him about. Now,
he said that he was saying it sarcastically, that it was a joke. But since he said that he didn't really mean that in a serious way, we've heard from a number of people. Kim Strassel from the Wall Street Journal did an op-ed on this as well. You've got John Solomon from The Hill. And in John Solomon's op-ed, which was posted last week, he writes this, that basically this was the plan. He joined me last week on Fox Business Network on the morning program, Mornings with Maria. Here's what he told us.
There are three separate FBI agents, McCabe, Lisa Page, and James Baker, the former FBI counsel, all who say this was a serious plot. This was not a joke. There was a real discussion in May, right after Comey was fired, about possibly taking out the president by recording him and then going to the cabinet, invoking the 25th Amendment. Just think how extraordinary that is. That's a political solution, and you've got the Justice Department and FBI, who are not supposed to be involved in politics, having the discussion. Joke or no joke, it's a serious matter, and it's a sort of an infringement of what the Justice Department and the FBI are supposed to do. I would expect Chairman Gowdy and lawmakers like Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, possibly to issue a subpoena to force this issue with Rosenstein as early as today or early next week. I think that's a second thing to watch in addition to the contempt filing that we should see.
Congressman, your take.
No, exactly. He's got to come in and answer questions. Who else may have been in that room? I will tell you this, Maria. When Jim Baker was in his deposition 2 weeks ago and was asked about this, he was as serious as you could be in describing what he understood took place in that meeting between Andrew McCabe and Rod Rosenstein, where Mr. Rosenstein talked about actually recording the President of the United States. So he needs to come in and answer our questions. And like I said, if it takes a subpoena, that's exactly what should be issued.
So you were in the deposition with James Baker, the first one, and you're going to be with him this upcoming Thursday. What do you want to get from James Baker this week?
Well, first of all, remember who this is. This is the FBI chief counsel. All kinds of things flow through him. So when he says that he believed Rod Rosenstein was serious about this alleged statement about recording the president, you got to take that with the weight that it comes with, because it's the FBI chief counsel. So we're going to ask him more about that. Our previous deposition was cut off early. We ran out of time, so we need him back in there, where we're going to ask more about that specific meeting that took place, and then his conversations with people who were in that meeting, how those went, and who all he talked to. So all those things need to be asked.
Well, it's interesting because you've spoken with him already, and then we know that he also met with the lawyer from the Democratic National Committee, Mr. Sussman. So tell us why that's important.
Well, you now have so many different people communicating information to the FBI about the Russia investigation. Remember, you had Nellie Orr, who we're going to interview later this week. Nellie Orr's husband, who's a top official of the DOJ, was getting information that he was passing on to the FBI. You had Glenn Simpson and actually Christopher Steele, the guy who wrote the dossier, passing information directly to the FBI. And now we know that the chief lawyer for Perkins Coie, who represented the Democrat National Committee, is giving information to the FBI chief counsel as well. So all these sources giving information to the FBI, I think it was this idea that if the more people you have talking about the big lie, which was the dossier, the more apt people are to believe it. And that's exactly the technique and the methods they were trying to use to get people to buy into this dossier that was actually used to go spy on the other party's campaign.
But what must be said here are the people that were giving the information to the FBI were all working for the opposition, Hillary Clinton.
Bruce Orr's wife was working for the opposition. Glenn Simpson was certainly working for the opposition, and Michael Zussman, the lawyer, Perkins Coie, was the key lawyer for the Democrat National Committee and the Clinton campaign. So that's exactly right. And yet, the document that was put together, this dossier, was what was used to go to the secret court to get a warrant to go spy on the other campaign. Well, that is never supposed to happen in this country, but it did.
But the other thing is that Rod Rosenstein okayed the final FISA warrant. I mean, that FISA warrant to spy on Carter Page was re-upped 3 times, and the final one was given the green light by Rod Rosenstein. So is he a witness?
Exactly right. I mean, there's all kinds of conflicts here. We now know the story that Mr. McCabe and Mr. Rosenstein have been in conflict and arguing about who should be recused. I think actually they're both right. Both of them should be recused from overseeing anything to do with the Mueller investigation.
Let me ask you about the conflicts that we're seeing between what you've heard from Andrew McCabe, who now has been referred criminal for criminal charges, and Rod Rosenstein, because apparently there are conflicts in what the two say.
Yeah. No, there are. No, exactly. And I, like I said, I think both of them should be shouldn't be overseeing the Mueller investigation, because McCabe had the conflict when his wife was running for office, and of course Rosenstein wrote the memo that was given to the president that became the justification for firing James Comey. And one of the things Mueller is looking into is potential obstruction of justice in the firing of James Comey. So exactly right. I think that both should not be involved. Neither should be involved. Of course, Andy McCabe isn't right now because he's been fired.
The president has said he's not going to fire Rod Rosenstein at this point. Given what you know, should he actually step down?
Well, I mean, look, I've not been a big fan of Mr. Rosenstein. The fact is, we've asked for the McCabe memos. There's been a subpoena for those. We haven't got those. We have asked to see the document that Mr. Rosenstein wrote on August 2nd, 2017, which altered the scope of the investigation that Mr. Mueller is doing. We haven't been able to see that. We've asked for specific portions of the FISA. We haven't been able to see that. We've asked for the 302s, that Bruce Orr's 302s, when he had conversations with the FBI detailing what he said to Glenn Simpson and Chris Steele. We haven't seen that. And John Huber, the guy who was put in charge of the U.S. attorney to look into all this, we've not had one report from him over the last 6 months since he's been on the job. So take all that and then add into the fact that Rod Rosenstein was a no-show this week and Glenn Simpson's taking the 5th on Tuesday. That is the thing that frustrates me, and more importantly, frustrates you in the media and those people across this great country who want to know exactly what happened.
Yeah, we're going to speak with Congressman John Ratcliffe in a few minutes. He has seen a lot of this classified information, and he's going to talk to us about the implications. But you just rattled off a couple of things that need to be public. Will the president declassify these documents so that the American people can understand how they put together this narrative that Donald Trump had anything to do with Russia meddling in the U.S. election?
Let's hope so. I mean, a few weeks ago, the president initially said that he was going to declassify them. He altered that and said that he would now run it through the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz. I hope that happens as soon as possible. I do think at some point we're going to get this information. We need to, because, again, we got to get answers to these important questions that go to the heart of this idea that it's supposed to be equal treatment under the law. It's supposed to be the rule of law, and I don't think that was followed in how the FBI started and launched and ran this investigation into the president and to Russia.
Well, of course, and they were overseeing 2 investigations. One investigation into this narrative that Donald Trump had anything to do with Russia meddling. At the same time, they were running the investigation into Hillary Clinton and her email scandal. And those 2 investigations were handled very differently. You said it. This is about America. This is about the rule of law. This should never have happened, where people in power could put their finger on the scale. Congressman, will there be any accountability for all of this?
Well, let's hope so. I actually, I hope in the end we get a Justice Department that will hold people accountable. But the frustrating part is this pattern. Remember, it was just a few years ago where we had Lois Lerner at the IRS target conservatives for their political beliefs. She was brought in front of Congress. She took the 5th. We had Brian Pagliano, who set up the email server for Secretary Clinton. He was called in front of Congress. He took the fifth. And now we have Glenn Simpson, the guy who was paid for by the Clinton campaign, who put together this fake dossier that was used to go spy on the Trump campaign. He now is supposed to come in front of Congress Tuesday, and he's going to take the fifth as well.
So it sounds like they're all getting away with it.
This is a dangerous pattern.
It sounds like they're all getting away with it.
And that's the part that drives Americans crazy.
That's
this idea
right.
that there's now this double standard, one set of rules for us regular folk, but a different set if you're part of the politically connected class. And that is what is so wrong, and that's why I am bound and determined we're going to subpoena whoever we have to and get the answers, and hopefully have a Justice Department who will actually prosecute people who deserve it.
But there is a big if there. If you hold on to the majority going into the midterm elections, all eyes are wondering if these investigations even continue. Because if the Democrats flip the House, we may never hear another word about these investigations.